how we going, YouTube? This one is without explicitly showing adult, mature, whatever content, but giving the tips or guides on how you can do this stuff and avoid being moderated. And also, if you're doing it for your personal use, to get the best results, least amount of effort type thing. The reason I'm doing this is I recently seen a profile that popped up. They only had 4 creations. They released them all, but they were of, in brackets, mature content. And they just publicly released it. It's like, straight off the bat, I knew this was going to happen. And all of a sudden, all 4 of their creations has disappeared. When you go to their account, their profile, all their four things were gone. So I'm guessing they were pulled. I doubt they were banned because they're still visible. Their profile's still visible. So things like nipples, lady parts, man parts, buttholes, that sort of stuff, they're all... Media Molecule has this allergic reaction to stuff that everybody already has. So like every person on the planet, except for the ones that have them surgically removed or have been born without them, have nipples. All the ladies have lady parts. All the men have men parts. Everyone has a butthole, except for the ones that medically were born with an abnormality that gave them a reason not to have them. So therefore, it should be a natural part of life. So I've got a ball here, or sphere. Let's clone him. Just so we can show yeses and nos kind of thing. My tip for the buttholes, if you're going to have just a butthole on the back, just say we're going to make let's just do this. If we're just going to make a butt crease, if you've already made the shapes and you haven't got the crease, you want to make a crease. If you use, thank you. If you use the whole subtract, and if you're on stamp, not smear, you'll get the blend tool, the blend amount. Add a bit of blend. Hello, there we go. And you can then just rotate whatever shape you're using to make a, in brackets, crease. And everyone knows a butt crack is a crease. So just say, boom, a bit of angle, butt crack. Now obviously it's not curved and all that, but if you want to make it curved, you'd have to sit there and go, for example, there, like this, copy that shape, bring it down a little bit with a bit of rotation, then take it in a little bit like that, and you can make a curve. But that would probably be as far as I'd risk going for as a public release. If you go any more than a butt crease, I can almost guarantee you're going to get flagged. But if you want to go more, hide that. The easiest thing to do is grab yourself the minus tool or subtract tool, the donut or filled donut. Don't necessarily have to add blend, but I always tend to, because we're sculpting a human character, so blend is good, but not a lot. So that is, as you can see, that is way too much. So give yourself that, make a little cross, because this is where a lot of cartoons and animes do it. Just put a little cross in there. That there is probably the best and easiest way to do it. Now ideally, if you want it realistic, you do the whole, the way I do it is I use the pyramid on the subtract, and again, ideally, a bit of blend, and you make yourself the star pattern, like that. Put a bit of blend on it. Now this one here, that sometimes this can be more the merrier. That looks a lot more like a butt. Now, again, I would not release it as a public creation, because then Media Molecule would have their usual hissy fit and go, how dare you, and remove it. You'll get flagged. It'll be classified as inappropriate, even though everybody on the planet has one, but it's inappropriate. So that's my tips for butts. Now nipples, very similar. Only instead of going to the using the minuses, we're going to use the adds. Ideally, the less detailed it is, the more likely you are to get away with it. So if we go, for example, grab a sphere on the positives, and we just go plonk, there's a nipple. You could get away with that. In theory, that you could get away with. Don't put any blend on it. Just plonk a little dot there. You might get away with it. Put a little bit of blend on it. The more blend you put, the more realistic it's got a tendency to look. So if you add, for example, a little bit more blend to it, and go like that, and we'll even add a little bit of that dimension, and you go, say, there, like that. That looks a lot more like a nipple, but you're risking them going, oh my god, that's realistic. And the same with if you get the same thing and get another sphere. Let's get a whole new one. If you then get it and go a good amount of blend, because we're going to blend, and we're going to make it flatter because we're going to make the base. If we do this, and as you can see, if we place it there, move it to roughly where we want it, go like this. Let's go, say, there. Let's shrink you down, move you out, and then let's just go like that. That is a fairly realistic looking nipple. That would more than likely get you flagged. So even going to one further and adding the, I don't know, the end part and going, oh yeah, let's add an indentation, that's almost certainly going to get you flagged. Hell, YouTube's probably going to say, oh my god, it's a nipple. So a simple bump, you might get away with. I wouldn't do any more than that on a publicly released creation. Now, if you want to do a ignore the thunder in the background, one where you're most likely to get away with it, use a lot of blend and have it an ever so slight, like that. That, there's a high chance you'll get away with. Now males, for the male anatomy, this one is tricky. Some of my stuff I've done certain things and I've gotten away with, other things I haven't. If you turn around and grab, for example, if you're making male anatomy, this tool here is a really useful one. If you get it with a little bit of blend, you can then tell it what exact shape you want. So you can say, we'll go straight so that YouTube's not going to flag it, but you could add a curve to it. In fact, we'll add a bit of curve to it, but we'll make it so it's YouTube's not going to go, oh yeah, that's that. So very, in brackets, thick antlers. You could then smush them together and you got a very thick antler. Now doing that in the right spot of the puppet will show as male anatomy. And obviously if you add the ball, the spheres, again, if you're using stamp, you can use the blend amount. That is clearly meant to be, like, obviously not, but the male member. Doing that will probably get flagged, even though you can see it's clearly nothing like it. But Media Molecule will almost certainly flag it. So my suggestion with that, if you don't want to get flagged, get, again, like with the nipple, the rough shape, butt ton of blend, put it in, and move it to roughly where it's going to be, and just have that. That you'll probably get away with. Now, lady parts, that's a whole different ballgame, because how detailed can you go before you get flagged? I find if I go a crease, so like I did with the butt crack, that, and we'll keep it fairly sharp, and we'll narrow this off. That there is the tool I would use to make it, and I would go something along the lines of, again, I'm not going to try and place the exact. I better close that window. Just give me 1 second. As the rains are coming down. Yeah, so basic shapes, the more likely you are to get away with it. The more complex details you put into it, the less likely you are to get away with it. So if you want to get away with it as a public release, the less effort you put into it, the less likely you are to get flagged. The more effort you put into it, the more likely you are to get flagged. If you don't want to be flagged, release it as a private creation, and then add someone as a collaboration. So that, in the right spot, you might get away with. I wouldn't hold my breath on it though, because media molecule being media molecule, they're likely to get, oh my god, and say hell no. That you could get away with if you're sneaky enough about its placement. Doing the whole thing I've seen a lot of going that shape or even that shape, going like this, and going like that in just actually maybe not there so YouTube doesn't have a fit, and doing that. Imagine that's underneath. Yeah, it's an easy way to do it, but many molecules could probably see that and go, well, that's a no-go. But if you do it just right and you place it just right, you could get away with it in theory. So doing that, placing it in just the right spot with just the, in brackets, you could get away with it. But would I recommend trying it? No, because their moderation system is actually it's horrible, and they're more than likely going to flag you. Doing the same shapes with blend on it, and get that, put a buttload of blend on it, that's a possible too. You could get flagged, it's not worth the risk. But if you do very, very subtle like that, you could get away with that. Placement and subtlety, that is the way, because a media molecule won't go looking if no one's reported it and they can't see it. So, because of the storm and everything like that, and because I've now described the easiest way to implement it with all your stuff, I might call it, but when you're releasing stuff that's of questionable content like this, when it comes to their moderation system, when you go to the save option and you release it online, release it as a private creation, so that they can still flag it, but the chances are they won't, because they don't look into the private creations. They look into the public creations because they're in brackets protecting the kids. So I hope this helps somebody, especially that guy that got all his stuff taken down, because the fact that they're inhibiting or withholding people's best way to explain it is they're stopping people's creativity from flowing. If people want to make something, they should be able to make it. They need to give us the options to release stuff like this where the kids can't see it. So that's why I was saying a mature option, so you can tick the maturity, and that way a PlayStation that doesn't have the parental lock set to whatever, if it's unlocked, they can view all content, then they should be able to view it. But my tip is, if it's obvious or of any sort of detail, don't release it as public. If you're going to do detail, release it as a private creation. If you want to share it with people, make it a private creation and add them as either a collaborator, so that they can then look at it, but then they can also edit it. So always make sure you back it up. So my suggestion would be, save your main creation as a private creation, then edit that as a remix, and then make that private creation the one that you collaborate with. So if someone screws it up, then you're not losing your original creation. And also too, when you're making a creation, if you're going to do any of this stuff, separate the saves before you start doing this stuff. You can then release the unmoderatable stuff and it's perfectly fine. It won't link back to the moderatable creations. So I hope these tips helped anyone who's creating any sort of mature content. I'm out here. Stay safe and don't get caught. So I'll catch you next time. See yous.